name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of No Time to Die, finally. Lots of people have already seen this movie. They're calling it one of the best James Bond movies ever. They're calling it an amazing send-off to Daniel Craig's James Bond. And I have to say, what the hell did they watch? Because we did not watch the same movie. Let's begin with what I did like. Daniel Craig does a fine job in this movie. I really like him as James Bond, and he doesn't bring anything new to the character here, but he continues to play it very well. There's one funny line by Ben Wishaw's character that I really liked. There's a few decent action scenes, especially one in the very beginning. I love the theme song to this movie by Billie Eilish. I'm not even a big Billie Eilish fan, but her song has a lot of atmosphere and emotion in it, and I just love the sound of it, and that entire opening title sequence is once again great. And I also love how they use her song throughout, but just the music of it, so it just has this feeling to it. It represents two characters, and the use of that song throughout was really well handled, and that's it. I did not like this movie much at all. Now, I loved Casino Royale. I thought that was an excellent movie. I thought Quantum of Solace was absolutely terrible, with some of the worst action scenes ever. Skyfall, I don't love it as much as most people do, but I still think it's a really good James Bond movie. Spectre is bad and boring, and I don't care about the overarching story. And No Time to Die, I didn't like. I don't care for this overarching story. Casino Royale is such an excellent movie, and when it ends and they set up a sequel, and then they actually keep this storyline going into the next few movies, why? I've never liked the fact that they did that. I don't think we need a giant overarching story, and if you do a giant overarching story, then at least have it planned out, because there's nothing about this that feels planned out. Like, they planned out each movie in this series with a clear goal. No, it just feels really made up on its spot. And when you do that, you can definitely tell, and it does take you out of it. I don't think we need this character arc that lasts all these movies for James Bond. I don't think that's why we like James Bond movies. He's a guy, he wears suits, all the ladies love him, he drinks martinis, shaken not stirred, he's a badass when the moment comes to it. I think that's all you really need from a James Bond movie. And the thing is, if the action in this movie was in any way memorable, I would be a lot more polite on it. The Mission Impossible movies, with the exception of the second one, I absolutely love. But if you look at the stories in those movies, they're nothing special. They're very generic stories. But the characters and the action sequences just allow those movies to stand out to the point where each movie feels very different than the last, despite the similar stories. And you just don't get that with this movie. It's completely reliant on this overarching story that I just did not care about. The character played by Leah Sedurux, whatever her name is, the main female actress in this movie, I don't think she's a memorable character whatsoever. So much of this movie depends on the rate of her and James Bond's relationship, but I didn't care about it in Spectre, and I certainly don't care about it now. The rest of the cast is pretty bad if you ask me. I love Ben Whishaw as an actor, but they don't utilize him enough. They introduced a new character played by Billy Magnussen, who gets completely wasted in this movie. They kind of build him up like he's going to have a bigger role in this movie, but he really doesn't. Who else? Lashna Lynch, I thought was really awful in this movie. She has not an ounce of personality or charisma, and she serves no purpose in this story. She has no effect on the movie's plot. Ray Fiennes is fine. Naomi Harris is good in these movies, but she's never given enough to do. I would love to see more of her. But it's just like you got all these supporting characters that really have no effect on the main plot. And they're just not memorable characters. They don't have enough personality. They don't have enough to do. When you watch a Mission Impossible movie, yeah, we love Ethan Hunt, but we also remember the badassness of Elsa Faust and Rebecca Ferguson. We love Simon Pegg as Benji and just how much comedy he brings to those movies. We love Ving Rhames as Luthor. We love Paula Patton. We love Jeremy Renner. Hell, we even love Alec Baldwin in those movies. You remember those cast members. You remember those characters and those actors. But here, just no one feels needed. It's just like they're there so they can add one time to the movie. I just wish they had more to do here. And I haven't even mentioned Rami Malek yet. Rami Malek is absolutely awful in this movie. I hated him as a villain. He doesn't have much to do, and the time he is on screen, he just does nothing for me. I thought he was an incredibly bland villain. This movie follows the familiar beats of a generic spy movie, and that's exactly what we get. The villain, the villain's plot, the emotional stakes at the end, none of it feels new. Now, some of it might feel new for people who have never watched a movie outside the James Bond movies before, but I'm assuming that's nobody, and if you haven't, then there's nothing here. There's nothing new here. It's just a very generic story. It's a very generic evil take over the world plot, and it's told in a very generic way. There's nothing about this movie that stood out to me. And you add the fact that this movie is almost 3 hours long when it certainly didn't need to be, and at the same time, it still feels like it's lacking in any sort of depth. You know, there's one moment where a character is expected to do something evil, but he does something good instead. And I'm just like, oh, okay, why did that character do that? Well, why did he decide to be good in that moment? And what's going to happen to him because of it? We don't freaking know. They never go into it. And then anytime there's a death scene, they just hold a zero emotional weight. I didn't care for any of the characters that did die. I'm just like, oh, I feel like I'm supposed to be really broken up about this, but I'm not. So, yikes. And this movie also begins in a very messy manner because there's an opening scene, and then I'm just like, okay, are we going to get the Bond titles here? But then the opening titles goes on for like, I want to say another 20 minutes. Like, it goes on for a very long time. And I hate it when movies do that. It doesn't feel like an opening. An opening should be one scene. It reminded me of Friday the 13th, the 2009 remake, because that movie's beginning, and I'm just like, oh wow, this movie is just getting started like that. And then at a certain point it hit me, oh, this is only the beginning of the movie. Why would they do this? And that's the same thought I had here. If you want to begin the movie with a big action scene, then just have the big action scene. In fact, I'd prefer it because then it doesn't reveal a certain bit of information that could have came in later into the movie. You know, if you want to have the opening be that 20-minute long action sequence, go ahead. No issues there. But it's not. It's made of two different scenes, and it just ruins the pacing of the movie to begin with. And the ending of this movie, I just found to be really bad. I know I'm supposed to be like, wow, that was quite the ending. But it didn't hit me in any way. It felt all so contrived to get to that point. And it didn't hit those emotional beats it needed to. Look, I really wanted to love this movie. The technical elements of it are amazing, especially the sound. This movie sounds incredible. Daniel Craig gives a fine performance, and there's a couple decent moments, but not enough to really allow this movie to stand out. This movie is so dependent on my investment in Lea Seydoux' character, and it just wasn't there. I did not care for this character and her relationship with Bond. The villain was absolutely atrocious, terribly written. I had just no interest in his plot. Ben Whishaw and Naomi Harris are fine in the movie, but they're completely underutilized. Lashna Lynch shouldn't have been in this movie in the first place. She adds nothing to the plot. The story is incredibly generic. It's told in a generic way, and nothing that happens has any sort of emotional weight. I was surprised at how little I liked this movie because I was expecting much better. And plus, it's far too long. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and give No Time to Die, I'll be nice, 3.5 out of 10. Okay, have you seen No Time to Die? Or do you have no time to watch No Time to Die? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.